Hey guys, in this video we're going to look at how to take chords of the Dorian mode to the next level by using what are called extended harmonies, or by adding more notes to each chord, extending them, as the name suggests, to give each chord a fuller and more nuanced sound. And with these extended chords, you can make really any progression in the Dorian mode sound more interesting and rich. So to start, the Dorian mode, like this Dorian pattern starting on C, has 8 notes. That includes intervals 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, and 8. In another video, I explain the Dorian mode in more detail. The link is in the notes. But based on this pattern of intervals, it has a kind of smooth vibe. And from these notes, you can play 7 distinct chords, starting on each respective scale degree, and then combining every other note in groups of 3, like this. So there's the C minor chord, minor 1, D minor, the minor 2 chord, E flat major, the flat major 3, F major, the major 4, G minor, the minor 5, A diminished, the diminished 6 chord, and then B flat major, the flat major 7 chord. Another name for these chords is triads because each triad has 3 notes. C minor has 3 notes, C, E flat, and G. D minor has 3 notes, D, F, and A. The E flat major triad has 3 notes, E flat, G, and B flat, and so on. All of these chords are triads because, again, each one is made up of 3 notes. And together they also sound compatible because these 7 chords are all built from the same underlying pattern of the Dorian mode. When you play the mode alone like this, just the 7 notes of the C Dorian mode in our example, it sounds sort of thin. But when you play the 7 chords in sequence, it basically sounds like the same pattern but fleshed out. In fact, the way we label these chords using Roman numerals highlights the fact that together these harmonies are really just the Dorian mode on steroids. The lowercase numeral I shows that this minor chord, C minor, is built on interval 1 of the C Dorian mode. Likewise, this lowercase numeral 2 means that the D minor chord is built on interval 2 of the mode, while this flat Roman numeral 3 illustrates that this E flat major chord is built on interval flat 3 of C Dorian, and so on. All of these Roman numerals correspond with their respective scale degrees in this mode. Okay, so that's how these 7 triads are formed, and by rearranging these chords in different ways, you can come up with all sorts of cool progressions. For example, say instead of C Dorian, we shift to the key of D, D Dorian, which has the same chords, just in a different key, and we take the minor 1, minor 2, major 4, minor 5, and flat major 3 chords, just this subset of chords for illustration, and we arrange them into this sequence, we get the song Drive by R.E.M. that's in D Dorian. Hey kids, rock and roll, nobody tells you where to go, baby. What if I ride? What if you walk? What if you rock around the clock? Tick tock, tick tock. What if you did? What if you walked? What if you tried to get off, baby? This song centers around and resolves to that minor 1 chord and has a very Dorian feel to it, but something you can do to bring out even more of that Dorian flavor is to play 7th chords of the Dorian mode, which sound amazing. To play 7th chords, all you have to do is continue the same pattern used to build each triad. So for example, in the key of D, the minor 1 triad, D minor, is played by combining every other note starting on D, which includes D, F, and A. Together, these 3 notes make the D minor triad. But if we kept going with the same pattern of adding every other note from the underlying Dorian pattern, extending the chord even further, then the next note to include is C, or interval 7, flat 7, in the D Dorian mode. And together, these 4 notes, D, F, A, and C, or intervals 1, flat 3, 5, and flat 7, make what's called a D minor 7, or in D Dorian, the minor 1 7. In music, this interval of a flat 7 is so common in chords, like this D minor 7 chord, that we just call it a 7th chord without going to the trouble of specifying that it actually includes a flat 7, like this C note, which is a flat 7 above D, the chord's root, or a whole step below the root's octave up here. So this is a D minor 7 chord, even though this 7 note is actually a flat 7. Now, because the 7th chord has an extra note, it sounds a little more interesting, a little more rich and nuanced, because there are more harmonic relationships at play. But because all of the notes still come from the same source pattern of the Dorian mode, they sound compatible. It's a pleasing harmony. And if you go down the line, adding a 7th note to each triad in the Dorian mode, following the same pattern of including every other note, all of the resulting chords sound good. Notice that each of these chords is called a 7th chord, even though they don't all include scale degree 7 of the mode, or in our example of D Dorian, the C note specifically. So you might wonder why they're all called 7th chords. It's because when we name chords, we essentially treat the root note of each chord as interval 1 and then count up from there. With the tonic chord, or the chord that's already built on the actual scale degree 1 of this mode, it's easy to do. In D Dorian, the D note is 1. F is flat 3, A is 5, C is flat 7, and together they make the D minor 7 chord. The E minor 7 chord technically starts on scale degree 2 of D Dorian, but when building out this chord, you can shift the scale degrees in your mind to see that G is a flat 3 above E, B is a 5th, and D is a flat 7 above E. So together, E, G, B, and D make an E minor 7 chord. Though because E is the 2nd scale degree in D Dorian, this E minor 7 chord is the minor 2 7th in D Dorian, if that makes sense. Now, this dual labeling of notes can seem a little strange at first, where you think of the root note of each chord as being its own little interval 1 in relation to the other notes within the chord, while also referring to each root note by its scale degree within the mode. But with the colors and shapes highlighting the intervals, it's much easier to see, and these naming conventions in music make sense. Okay, so now that we've made each triad of the Dorian mode a 7th chord, you'll see that 2 types of 7th chords show up. The minor 1, minor 2, major 4, minor 5, and diminished 6 chords all become standard 7th chords, meaning that each one has a flat 7 note above the respective root notes. And then 2 of the chords, flat major 3 and flat major 7, are major 7th chords labeled with a triangle symbol. That means that these harmonies have a major 7th interval that's only a half step below each root's octave. So F major 7, this flat major 3 7 includes notes F, A, C, and E, or intervals 1, 3, 5, and major 7 in that chord based on the root note 1 of 3. And the C major 7 chord, the flat major 7, 7 in D Dorian, is made of notes C, E, G, and B, which are also intervals 1, 3, 5, and major 7 in that chord. Major 7th chords, like the C major 7, sound a little more tense than plain old 7th chords, like this G7, because of that dissonant interval of a major 7th, which is a half step between the major 7 of the chord and its octave, the root's octave. So the flat 7, aka the regular 7th, like in this G7, are more common, and they really add interest and flavor to a song. To give you an example, let's take these 2 chords, the minor 1 7 and the major 4 7, and using these harmonies, you can play the song Uptown Funk from beginning to end. Here's the chorus. Uptown, funk you up. Uptown, funk you up. Uptown, funk you up. Uptown, funk you up. With these 7th chords, the progression has some extra depth to it, even though it's just 2 chords alternating back and forth. And to hear what I mean, try playing this same tune with only the basic triads, and it definitely sounds thinner and a bit more bland. Depending on the song and the sound you're going for, 7th chords can add just the right amount of flavor, and in the Dorian mode, these larger chords sound nice. But you don't have to stop there, because by adding even more notes to a chord, you can play what are called extended chords to give a song even more nuance. To build these extended chords, you just use the same formula of combining every other note, starting on each scale degree of the Dorian mode, to build even bigger harmonies. So in our example of D Dorian, starting on scale degree 1, the D note, we can play D, F, and A to make the D minor triad, and then D, F, A, and C to make the D minor 7 chord, and then continuing on D, F, A, C, and E to make the extended chord D minor 9, which adds this 9 chord, which is really just the same as scale degree 2, but it's above the root note's octave, so it's the 9. So we've got D, F, A, C, and E. And this 9 chord has more of a nuanced sound. There's more of a complex harmony. And then we can play even more extended chords just by following the same pattern, adding every other note to get an 11th chord, in this case a minor 11, so D, F, A, C, E, and G, and then a 13th chord, or a minor 13th, since this B note is an octave above D Dorian's 6. So D, F, A, C, E, G, and B is a minor 13. And then there is no, to play an even more extended chord, there is no 15th chord, because this D note is just an octave of the root note, which is already included. So 13 here is the highest interval in these extended chords. Though of course we've only looked at extensions of this minor 1 chord, all of the alternating intervals that build on scale degree 1 in the Dorian mode. But the same idea applies for building extended chords starting on each of the other scale degrees. The process is the same, but because of the underlying interval pattern of this mode, each chord is a little different, giving them all different names and subtly unique sounds, which at first might seem a bit overwhelming since so many extended chords can be formed. But it's really not that hard to know what chords can be built on all of the scale degrees in the Dorian mode by using what's called the circle of thirds, and here's how it works. Again, looking at the D Dorian mode in this table format, you can see how 7 basic chords are formed by starting on each respective scale degree and then combining every other note. Well, since this alternating pattern simply repeats itself, eventually cycling through every note of the Dorian mode before repeating the pattern again, a more concise way to picture this sequence of chords that combines every other note is to simply place all of the notes in a loop like this, arranged by intervals of minor thirds and major thirds, which is why musicians call it the circle of thirds. All 7 chords of the Dorian mode are shown here. The minor 1, or D minor in our example, D, F, and A, the minor 2, or E minor, E, G, and B, flat major 3, F, F, A, and C, the major 4 chord, G, G, B, and D, the minor 5, A minor, A, C, and E, the diminished 6 chord, B diminished, B, D, and F, and then the flat major 7, C, C, E, and G. Only now, all of the notes are already arranged in the every other pattern used to build each chord. And since each extended chord grows by adding more and more notes, spaced at intervals of a third, you can use this diagram to quickly see all of the extended chords of the Dorian mode. The D minor triad, minor 1 for example, can be expanded into D minor 7, D minor 9, D minor 11, and D minor 13. The E minor triad, minor 2, can be expanded into E minor 7, E minor flat 9, E minor flat 9 11, and E minor flat 9 flat 13, and so on. Using the circle of thirds, you can easily build the extended chords that start on each scale degree of this mode. And for quick reference, I've included a link in the video notes to diagrams that spell out all of these chords in every key. So definitely check that out. But now that you know how to build these chords and you can see the logic behind them, let's hear how some of these chords sound in an actual song, how extended chords can make a progression sound even more interesting and full. And we'll use Lana Del Rey's Blue Jeans in F Dorian to illustrate. The entire song uses only 3 chords: F minor, or the minor 1 chord, E flat major, or the flat major 7 chord, and B flat major, or the major 4. And using only these basic triads, it goes like this. Blue jeans, white shirt, walked into the room, you know you made my eyes burn. I was like James Dean, for sure, you're so fresh to death and sick as cancer. Actually, this is the exact same progression as Chris Isaak's song Wicked Game, written in B Dorian, which is why it has the same kind of dark, brooding vibe. But anyway, in this song, with just these triads alone, the minor 1, flat major 7, and major 4, repeated over and over again, sounds really good. But by extending each of these chords a bit, you can take the moody feel of Lana Del Rey's song to the next level. So for example, if we play each of these as 9th chords, so F minor 9, E flat major 9, and B flat 9, or minor 1 9, flat major 7, major 9, and major 4 9, the song takes on even more nuance and depth. I will love you till the end of time. I would wait a million years. Promise you'll remember that you're mine. Baby, you can see through the tears. The extended chords definitely add harmonic ambiguity, more dissonance and depth, which you may or may not like depending on the song and where you are within a given song. So, of course, you can play around with how and where to place extended chords within a song. It's not all or nothing. You can move back and forth between them and simpler seventh chords or just basic triads. It depends on the buildup of the song or how other instruments might fit into the mix. So, for example, you might switch things up a bit like this. Love you more than those bitches before, say you'll remember, oh baby. So just basic triads, and then going into the extended chords. I will love you till the end of time. There are no hard rules for using extended chords, so feel free to experiment with them. And though the names and symbols that musicians use to label them can seem a little confusing at first, the underlying logic of how they're built, the music theory behind them, is actually really simple. So I hope this was helpful. If so, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.